Today, I'm going to be talking about writing and returning, looking backward and moving forward. Before I get into the gist of it, I'll give some background and of where this came from, and I'll read you something, some of the writing associated with it. But one of the things that I want to say is that as writers, as people, we're all running from something. If you look, if you think about it, there's a point of departure for all of us. And as a matter of fact, I was walking one morning and I was walking north on Meridian and the long line of cars were coming south with lights on. And I said, you know what? Somebody who just shows up, there's no difference looking at the cars. There's no difference in the line of cars moving slowly south on Meridian. To remember when people were fleeing Katrina, there was that long line of cars. And I thought, you know what, we're all refugees. The difference is the level of desperation. And the people I'm seeing, they're running from poverty, they're running from bill collectors, they're running to work. Because by going to work every day, you keep the bill collector at bay. And I'm on the road, I'm running from something to another. I'm also a refugee. I'm trying to stay young, I'm trying to stay in good shape. So the question is, because the whole issue of refugees in Syria and all that has been in the news, but essentially we are all refugees. We're running from something. The difference is their level of desperation is far greater than ours. But in a writing context, we've all begun someplace and we're someplace else. And the tension for us as writers is, how did we get from A to B? And do we have the self-awareness as writers to retrace our steps? And I know there are different ways, people, I just got lucky. The writer will go a little further than that because it wasn't just luck, there's more at stake. And so part of the discussion is in terms of the writing and the returning, because the person who writes and the person who returns is not the same person who started. And writing and returning is sort of a compulsory thing. Is that, she was mentioning that she's going home for Thanksgiving. And the person who goes home to Louisiana for Thanksgiving is not the person who left all those years ago. And the liquor store may be there, her mom, even the room she grew up in is still there, but the room doesn't look the same. The dimensions of the room have not changed. The person has changed. And so all of a sudden, the room is smaller than she remembers it. Her father, if her father is still alive, she remembers how tall he was, how powerful he was. He's not so tall anymore because that person has been in a wider world. And so that person has grown, that person has expanded. And so all of a sudden, looking back to that focus. And so as a writer, the tension between the past and the present is where it becomes a stimuli for writing and for self-discovery. And so this whole topic came to me for writing and returning at 40,000 feet. And I'm going to read just a little bit of something that was related to it. It says, the right of return for burial is the fate of the exile. So sooner or later, the dreaded phone call arrives, usually at dawn with an insistence and urgency, foretelling bad tidings from a long distance. The peculiar ring cuts through the air. It silences conversation. It invokes reverence. The world changes in a flash. I waited 30 years in fear of that phone call. When it came, I failed to answer. My grandmother is dead. I must bury her. To bury my dead, I must journey from my present to my past, across latitudes and longitudes, from north to south, east to west. She was my mother. To bury her is to close the book on my childhood, a chapter with a distinct beginning and end. But closing the book opens the door to the memory of that childhood, spent in a house on Mercer Street, in a place called Germantown, on the fringes of Plymouth, the colonial capital of an island Christopher Columbus christened Montserrat. My biography encompasses a geography of people and places, houses and land, tears and joy, pain and passion, of sorrow and sadness, past and present. To return is to reflect. To return means never to forget. Seated in the cramped confines of coach aboard American Airlines Flight 2405, bound from Antigua to Miami, the burial behind me, I retraced the previous 2 weeks, frenetic preparations to return home. The intercontinental transoceanic dialogue to finalize the funeral service program, songs by Charles and John Wesley, black and white photographs of a certain time and place, a genealogical investigation to include every living maternal blood relative, their plum-sized cheekbones adorning their faces. They betray a membership of a peculiar tribe, mine. The journey home begins first with memory, then follows with motion. I fly from Tallahassee to Miami to Skerritt International Airport. A minivan taxi transports my wife, my daughter, and me to St. John's Harbor, where a ferry boat awaits. For 2 hours we sail from one island to the next. The azure green beckons, rolls and tosses. Land remains within view, first at a distance, then mossy green hills rise like an abandoned tropical fortress. That used to be home. Funeral services begin on a sunlit Saturday afternoon at an Anglican church. The end in a crudely dug grave beneath a flaming red, flowering flamboyant tree on the rocky hillside at the Salem Methodist Cemetery, a quarter mile away. In between, generations sing my grandmother's praise. A child of the 20th century, she lived in a world transformed, from the penury of peasant farming to the computer age. At 92, she sat 4 generations of descendants on her leads. Her genes are immortal. They will live on forever. Between my moments of reverie, I read. In my lap sits the paperback False Papers, Andrew Asserman's Essays on Exile and Memory. I had first encountered Asserman's work in Out of Egypt, a memoir of his boyhood in Alexandria, Egypt, before Egyptian strongman Abdel Nasser expelled Asserman and his Jewish family in the wake of the debacle that was the Suez Crisis of 1956. His essay, Arbitrage, is a recollection of the struggle to write a story about a particular time and place in his boyhood home, a home lost to exile. Asserman wanted to repatriate his memories, ship everything back home. This is the abode of exile, where memories are a commodity and home sits at a distance. Then I encountered a passage that opened my eyes to what I had just experienced. Going home for my grandmother's funeral meant revisiting my intimate past, the landscape of my first 20 years of life, childhood, adolescence, early manhood, a time of spiritual, emotional, and sexual awakening. It also meant late nights awake at the laptop, capturing the sound of the wind in the trees, branches lashing against the aluminum windows, unable to quiet the distant but resonant voices of ancestors conversing in my head. Certain writers can perform a kind of fortune telling, deja vu in advance, almost naturally, writes Pico Meyer. It was as if Asserman, he foresaw my life before I did. Aboard that plane, sandwiched between 2 returns, home and home in exile, Asserman's words leapt off the page, demanded greater scrutiny. My inability to write the story mirrored my inability to return to Egypt, and I began to feel that the act of writing and returning were bound in such intricate ways that without returning, I would never be able to write anything at all. But that returning would close the book on Egypt before I had done so on paper. Okay, so that's the genesis of what we're going to talk about. But again, it just that one moment of clarity. And so, what do I mean by writing and returning? So we've got Asserman, and he's talking about returning, and what does that mean? And the book again is from False Papers, and I'm sort of guilty of, I've been doing way too much reading, spending way too much on books, my wife will say. But one of the things that I've come to appreciate is, if you want to write, you have to read. I used to think that you can get away with that. If you're serious about your writing, you have to read. Okay. So what does it mean? All right. Okay, and who's writing? All right, let's begin. Who's writing and why? The person who's writing is somebody who's left one place and left it, and because of time, the person who is not the person who was. And so in the person, once you go back, you're all that experience, all that you've seen and heard, all the aspirations, all that stuff sort of conflate and creates a certain pressure. And it's like, how do you process that information? And part of the discussion is, do you process it as poetry? Do you process it as fiction? Well, you know, you can call it whatever you want. If it's fiction, yes. Granted, if you say it's nonfiction, then there's certain rules. But again, I'm always envious of fiction writers, because you can say anything is fiction. Even though, that sounds true, but if I say it's fiction, it's fiction. Okay? If you say it's fiction, yes. Non-fiction is different. Because it's supposed to be true, and people don't want to sue you for trying to make them look bad. But it's fiction, folks. I know you were wearing that black pants and that black shirt that certain day, but this is fiction. Yeah, and so who's writing? The person who's writing has been changed by time, by circumstances, by experience. And that person used to be really ambitious, and life might have crushed all that ambition. When you got married and you had 5, 6 children, and the children got in the way of the books, of the views that you have, and all of a sudden you're 42 and you're looking, it's like, whoa. It's, and the fun thing about being a writer is that there's no need for regret, because all that stuff, folks, all it is raw materials. And so the person, maybe somebody, like I said, that person could be a person of regret. That person could not a person who had everything they've ever wanted. I've never wanted to be one of those people, because I'm always afraid if I'm too happy and everything, then what am I going to write about? And I think adversity gives us that sort of pressure, that tension to be creative. That's what, not a lot of great stuff come out of suburbia, because life is too good. Yeah, and so, that's, life gives us that sausage, I know we got some vegans here, but we're not eating it, we're just talking about it. And so the person who writes in return is the person who was left. And even if you haven't moved far geographically, there's still that distance, because you go back and you hear your grandmother say something, and all of a sudden in that one sentence, it's like so many things blossom, so many memories. And the why is simple. You have to. It's what keeps us awake at night. Yeah, it's that restlessness. And how many times you go someplace and like, ooh, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. If there's one statement you hear from more people than anybody else, it's, I want to write a book. God. Man, if everybody who said they want to write a book can write a book, there's going to be a lot of books around. A lot of books around. Yes, no question about it. So again, and then there's the notion of exile. We're all in exile from something. And there are people, and the original notion of exile, a lot of us, in terms of, biblically, we you talk about the people of Israel being in exile in Egypt, and living in somebody else's country. Exile, that's the fundamental. You're not home. You're not home. You've got to put up with other people's circumstances. And we talked later on with the exile in Babylon. And yes, so exile has always been a big part of the narrative. As people of color, we've been in exile for a long time. I mean, and part of, and I know a lot of us, we don't want to talk about it, but there is a price we pay for living this in America. Not to say that living in West Africa was perfect, but there's a cultural price we pay, to be rooted, to have lost your name, to have lost your language. And there's a discussion of if you lose your language, you lose your soul. But thankfully, we have found a new language, and we're learning to say, we're using our inherited language to talk about things that happened even before this language was ours. And so that's part of the dynamics of exile. And so much of the best writing that you see is from the exile experience. Again, the sense of I'm not where I wanted to be. That tension. And so if you remember Robert Butler, when he talked about yearning, about every writing, anytime what makes writing special is that there needs to be a yearning in the writing. And that writing and returning, readers are affected by the fact that this person is not where they want to be. They want to be someplace else. And that yearning infuses the work and gives it power. And again, and part of it is, some of it may be economic, a lot of it is emotional. That first love, that we had for somebody or something, and it's no longer ours. And we're trying to close the distance. And so writing and returning is one way of closing the distance. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, what's being written? On the handout, I've got some quotable quotes. And one suggestion I'm going to give is that when you're reading, keep your highlighter close, keep your iPad close, keep your notebook close. Because one of the wonderful things about it is that when you see a quote in a book, you can write it down. Because you hear people using quotes all the time. And how did they do that? They didn't remember it all. They just wrote it down. They wrote it down someplace that they can come back and find it. That's the secret. And I found my iPad comes in really handy for that. When we're reading books for book reviews, I'm taking notes. So by the time I'm done the book, I've got 600 words already on all I need to just sit. And I just work around that. It really makes your life easier. Here's a classic case of where are we coming from. This is from V.S. Naipaul. He's a Nobel Prize writer. I long to get away from the easy malice of the small place I grew up in, where all the judgments are moralistic and hateful and corrupting, the judgments of gossip. Hope you got a pen or a piece of paper. But for 2 minutes, can you go back to that small place? Just for 2 minutes, and you can do it in poetry, you can do it in prose, whatever form you want to do it. Yes. I long to get away from the easy malice of the small place I grew up in, where all judgments are moralistic and hateful and corrupting, the judgments of gossip. And your experience may not be as his, but a little bit of background, he's Indian, he's of Indian descent, but he grew up in Trinidad. Because after slavery was abolished, they needed people to work the rice fields and to do the hard work. And black folks were like, you know what, if I don't have to do it, I'm not doing it anymore. So they imported people from India to work in the fields. And so he is a descendant of the people who were brought in to do the work. And Indian folks were typically country people, And so, and they brought a lot of their culture from it. And so he was desperate to get away from that, and he got a scholarship to go to England. But yeah, so the exercise is 2 minutes, write about that small place you grew up in. And, you know, were the judgments moralistic, or were they, what was the dominant image coming back from that place? Do you have any brave souls who want to?
A place of rejection where you long for that special love of a father. Because of the sins of my mother and my father, all the judgment and gossip affected me. That small place where I felt, where I was feeling was not important.
Wow. I long to get away from the eyes and ears of the reporters, the tale tellers, who knew my father's heavy hand, his lust to never spare the rod, and to get to a place where they could somehow spoil me as a child.
They call it the hog town, a gate of the icon, apt descriptions. Many days I wiped the slop thrown at my uniqueness. Many nights I nursed wounds from reptilic, narrow minds with vast tongues of cruelty for true, authentic, creative ambition from a fatherless child. The only shadow and gifted in AP, the skinny nerd whose best friends were books, the yearning to leave at all costs early.
Wow.
Thank you, that is.
That was good.
Keep going, sister, keep going. That's fine. Anybody else want to share?
I long to return to the cool breeze of trees, listening to my grandmother hum hymnals while hanging clothes on the clothesline. Yet here I am, bags packed, waiting by the door for my mother to come to take me back to my place of insecurity, always moving, always changing.
Thank you for sharing that. And again, what the exercise was, it's about returning. And there are different ways of returning. One, I just ask you to return in memory, just to go back to a particular place. There's the physical return, where you pack your bags and your memories, and you go home with them. And then there's a returning that comes from reading, where you're reading a piece of work and something, and it hits, and it sort of like it opens you up like a can, and it takes you back to that place, that time. And there's a line: "There's no ship like a book." That's not my line. It's Emily Dickinson's line. Yes, there's no ship like a book. The book's the powerful to transport. And so, yeah, so types of return. Again, so the return in memory, and the thing about returning in memory, our memory is triggered in a lot of ways. The five senses. For we've got a mostly female audience. You remember your dad, what your dad smelled like. After he came from work. It's like, or if he was an outlaw kind of guy, or what his voice sounded like. Sounds. The music that was on the radio when you were in love at first love. The music that was on the radio. You hear the song, and all of a sudden, it takes you. There's a piece that I wrote where a friend of mine was getting married, and back in the 90s, and I remember when she was getting married. I remember the songs that were on the radio when we were in class, when we were back in class together, way back. And it's like a perfume somebody wears. It's like somebody you dated 15 years ago, and all of a sudden somebody walks in with the same perfume, and it just, for that moment, because all of the memories come back. And so part of the writing and returning is using the five senses as triggers, using the five senses as triggers. I remember thinking of playing say a little prayer. I was listening to that today, and because of the role he played in the movie, My Best Friend's
Yep.
Wedding.
Yeah.
A lot of people, for a lot of folks, that was their introduction to that song. But for the older people, that song, means something else. And we all have a soundtrack. We all have a song that, when it comes on, there's a certain thing that plays in our mind. And so part of what we can do as writers is using those up, using the sights, the smells, the sounds as triggers, whether we're writing poetry, whether we're writing fiction or not. And sometimes it may not be a whole work, it may just be a scene. And so that's why we need to keep our notepads ready, because when those moments come, you need to write them down and preserve them, because what happens is that those moments, why was I so excited about that again? I didn't write it down, because you've got to capture stuff in the moment. If you capture stuff in the moment, it will keep it forever. Yes, you've got to write, yes. And as a writer of nonfiction, one of the things that I benefit from is that I've got stuff that I wrote on 20 years ago. And unlike our parents, we've got computers, and we've got these flash drives. They weren't always like this, but as the technology changed, we've been smart enough to change. But again, there's stuff I've written 20, 25 years ago that I haven't published. But because I wrote it when it happened, it's still fresh. I can go back and enter that moment. We write our parents are a big deal in our lives. If you've never written about your parents before they died, don't try doing it afterwards, because the stuff you write, is not true, because it's sort of refracted, it's sort of bent, and sort of mangled by guilt and time and all kinds of stuff. You've got to write it when they're still here, because the minute they're gone, everything changes. And we can put, and there's a really good piece about memory, about experience here. It says, when we want to remember our experience, our brains quickly reweave the tapestry by fabricating, not actually retrieving, but fabricating the bulk of information we experience as memory. What is that saying? A lot of stuff that we think we remember didn't really happen. We made it up because it makes us feel good. And it's a debate we can have. It's different people stand, yes. But it's essentially saying that memory isn't really memory, that it is a creation. But if I'm a fiction writer, I want to hear this. Because, again, it tells me that everything that I'm doing is legitimate. Yes, it makes everything that we do legitimate. And so, but again, a lot of it needs to be written in real time. Just write it, it hits you, there's a fight, something between you and a sibling, and it moves you emotionally. Write it on a notebook, even if you don't come to it for 10, 15 years. If you're a real writer, sooner or later, it will come in handy. And there's nothing like going back to your old things, which come back to one of the other sayings, that one of the quotes I found. Photographs, mementos, and journal entries are letters we send to the future. Can you get that? Yeah. Are letters we send to the future, and by writing about events gone by, we can communicate to some extent with the past. And the future is what? An investment. So think of the things that you write down as in your journal. Because remember, the future is all about investment. And so you're making an investment in your writing in the future by writing about some in the past, in the present. And so, I wish these quotes were mine. I really do. But the wonderful thing is that you can share them. And this book, I actually had to go looking at FSU library to find it. It wasn't easy, but really wonderful, really wonderful. And again, to do this regularly and intelligently is to expand our being in time. Again, it's saying if we were good at writing down stuff in the present, it expands our sense of our place, of where we sit. And it means that when we sit at the table to write, we'll always have something to write about. Because guess what? We've been making an investment in the future. So again, yeah, so when things are happening, you've got, no matter what genre you're writing in, write stuff down, take notes, send yourself an email. That's the fun thing. Okay, when you send yourself an email, it's always it's always there, because it's all about curating experience. And so we've got memory, we've got and the memory triggered by the senses. We've got the return. But even before I get into that, one of the thing about memory is that we don't need a passport to go home with memory. It's the cheapest way. It may not always be it may be painful. It may be painful, it may be emotionally traumatic. But money-wise, it's relative. Yes. You need no plane ticket. Yes, but one thing you absolutely need, your passport is courage. Your passport is courage.
Wow.
You need to be brave. Because one of the things about bad stuff happening, bad stuff is painful. And we want to avoid that painful stuff at all costs. But you can't be the writer you want to be if all you do is gloss over stuff. And the challenge as writers is, and I know my wife and I, we have the discussion. Are you going deep enough? Are we really getting to the meat of stuff? Some of the stuff I heard here right now is like, I'm amazed that these people can go that deep, that far. I can't go that deep on the first dive. I need to dive and revise to get to some of the places that I've seen you guys get to.
Yeah, me too.
And
Wow.
the thing you need to understand is, are you a deep diver on the first go, or do you need to keep diving? You do, and the diving is about revising. It's never good enough on the first go. It's just never good enough on the first go. But if you keep
that
going, you're shocked at some of the stuff you come up with if you keep going back. And so I'm really amazed at how deep some of you guys went on that first draft. Because it's like, man, I got all that stuff. I don't want to deal with that stuff. And maybe because I'm a guy too, is that I think as a man, my level of self-awareness is not nearly it needs practice. It needs practice. It needs practice. And the good thing, and one of the things about writing is, writing makes me more self-aware, because I say stuff and, no, that's not it. You need to do better than that. Yeah, and writing, you can't be a good writer, folks, if you're not self-aware. And what does it mean to be self-aware? To really, that the person who you're seeing in the mirror has some resemblance to the person all the people see.
Right.
And one of the wonderful things about life is we're very good at aligning to the person in the mirror. We've got our sense of who we think we want to be, and we pack our bags in. But now nobody else sees us that way. The thing about being a writer is you get the chance to be self-aware, and hopefully you get paid for it eventually. But again, yes.
Eventually.
Yes. So, but part of it is, like I said, it's being able to go deep, but to go deep is you have to keep going back. You let it sit for a day, or not too long, and you come back. You do some other reading, and because the other thing too is that what I find is that if you're reading good stuff while you write, you see what other people are doing with things, and it's like, oh man, and you think, ooh, can I try that? Yeah. Of course you can. One thing you can't do is you can't copy somebody else's stuff.
Right.
But if the guy says, he said blood and guts, you can flip it around. But if somebody has a great line, you can play around with it and make it yours. You
Yeah,
just
that's
can't
right.
steal their heart.
That's
Yes.
right.
But again, but one, you need courage for the memory stuff. And again, it's not about you. There are other people who can't go there. But because you've gone there and you've done a good job of it, oh, this person is telling me more about me than I'm willing to admit. The person's just, by paying $15 for this book, I save myself having to go to therapy. Yeah, so that's part of returning. Because, and why do we have to? Because there's unfinished business. It's not self. You know, people may be dead and all that stuff, but every night you go to bed, every conversation you have, every emotion, every relationship you begin, a lot of that stuff keeps coming up. It means so it's unsolved, and so returning is imperative if you're gonna sell stuff. And in order for other people to sell it, you have to sell it first because you set an example. That's why God made you a writer. Okay, and then we've got the physical return again, which is always, every time and sometimes it's not even going home, it's just going someplace where you're going to see people you know. See people you were in high school with. Oh boy, those trips set in motion a lot of stuff. Because, there's not like getting around people who knew you before you were you. They knew you before when you walked around with shoes that had holes in it, when your grammar and your syntax was just not right. Before you got crowns on your teeth. Yeah, they knew you. I remember writing an essay when my sister comes to visit. Because when my sister visits, she and my wife, they gang up on me because my version of what happened tends to be different. My sister is about 3 years older than me, and so it's like, whoa, that's not how I remember the story. But again, that's the fun part. And but unfortunately, I'm trying to write non-fiction, so I gotta be accurate. If you're writing fiction,
It doesn't matter.
the only version that matters is yours. The only version that matters is yours. And then again, reading, because reading will transport you. And again, the thing is, be aggressive with the reading. And a lot of times we use reading as an excuse not to write. That's always the danger. Man, this book is so good. No, you got it. There's your book too. Yes. But if you can find the balance, but it's important because that reading you do will help shape your work and help shape it in a good way. It shapes it in a great way. Let's do another quick exercise with the 5 senses. Okay, we've got 5 senses, and think of and like again, fiction, prose, poetry, whatever you want to do. So let's spend a couple minutes where either a song, somebody's perfume, somebody's voice, a picture you saw on Facebook, something triggered by one of the 5 senses, sends you, forces you to return. And like for example, Facebook liked to do that a year ago. All of a sudden.
Oh yeah, in the past.
Yeah.
Today
and it's
in the past.
So if you've got your phone and you want to go back to a date, a picture, an old picture on Facebook, that yes. But a song again, or it could be, just you were someplace and you ran into somebody you hadn't seen in 20 years. I remember that happened to me in Tampa once, and I did an essay. This guy, we weren't friends, but I remember him, and I saw him with his kids, and it was like I saw him, and behind him I saw everybody that he went to school with, he lived with. It was just in my head. It was the distance between where he was and where just saw jumping, and I wrote about it. But I remember, a phone, somebody's phone rings, and that ring reminds you of somebody else's ring. And all of a sudden that, a lot of us, we've got friends who call us on FaceTime or Skype. And you remember when that call on Skype rang, we go all the way back that phone call at midnight. So, all right, let's see. It's about 4 minutes, and again, the writing prompt is using any sense, smell, taste, touch. Walking into your grandmother's kitchen on a Saturday afternoon, smelling the stuff that she's cooking, that sort of returning, or the sound of a song from your high school, your high school reunion, and there was that song that took you back to 78.
From the first note, his face appears, every word, every beat, and his body nears. The artist sings to me, and I feel the rush, as I remember the first time I saw my forever crush.
His cologne may as well be his DNA. Every time that epic and flirtatious scent across my nostrils, it takes me to a place I'm glad I left. His choice of scent may have been the best version of his judgment. Now every time I hug my friend, who is nothing like that bad choice, I'm contradicted with embracing the smell I love and managing the memory of my biggest regret.
I wish I could fly like a firefly through time to your body next to mine, warm and satisfied. That was our song. Memories, memories, sweet, sweet memories. The words echoed in my mind as I sought to find the man that had breezed by me wearing Aramis cologne. I had to find him and see for myself that he was not the love of my life come back from the dead.
One of the fun things of hearing the reading is the metaphors. There have been, some of you folks dropped in some metaphors that rocked the place. Really, really powerful stuff. And I know that a lot of writers say, I can't do metaphors. I don't know how to do metaphors. But not for this group. There was an exercise that this guy Jamal made. He's a brother. He's a poet out of Detroit. Really, really dynamic. Really young guy, but he's wonderful. There's an exercise he did while I was finishing my MFA, and actually I posted a couple of tweets recently, and they were from that exercise that he gave. And I think the last thing we'll do is that exercise. And I'm not sure if anybody has seen. There's one where love is a ripe mango and peanut butter. Not peanut butter, and guava jelly with bread. That was one of those that I posted. And the other one was fear is a 2x4 to the head and a gun in my face.
Yes, it is.
And those were from that exercise. But this is a gift that he gave me, and I like to, as a takeaway. We'll do that exercise in a second, but the handout that I gave you, there are a couple, just at the bottom, there are 5 tips for making writing and returning payoff. Return is mandatory. You gotta go, whether it's physical, physical travel is great, and it's wonderful for research. It's not like being in a place and hearing the sounds again, seeing, there's something, I didn't remember that. I thought that house was next door. No, it's all the way down at the end of the corner. Reading goes without saying. Whenever you encounter triggers, highlight them, write them down, treat them, but make them your own. Memory is your friend, sight, sound, smells, touches, whenever it triggers, takes you back. And that's the thing about being older. We keep everything. When you're a kid, you forget stuff. Yes, we keep our stuff. But right in the moment. Don't wait, don't put it off. If you're in the hospital, you're doing your annual physical, and the doctor, the doctor just is saying some stuff to you that you really don't want to hear. While in between it goes to go call the nurse, write down some of that stuff because there's some stuff that you're feeling right then and there. Next year you'll forget how traumatized, how scared you were. If you write it in the moment, yes. And poets, this isn't just for nonfiction. Poet and prose writers can both benefit from writing and returning, and you know, I think it's the time machine effect. You gotta grab it, keep it, and if you got it in the present, remember what he says about those journal entries, letters that you're sending to your future self, and that future self is going to be busy, and that future self is going to be busy, especially if you're taking notes. You know, you can't just drive down the road, and my wife and I, we have that, you know, what was that person wearing? You know, I'm busy looking, I'm busy watching, I'm busy listening. You're in the restaurant and there are folks sitting next to you. And some of the, when you're at the airport, you're in a line and the person next to you is on the phone. And some of the stuff they're saying, don't zone it out, folks. All that stuff is raw material. Because there is no way you could say this stuff the way people say. You can't make it up.
You can't make it up.
And people's sense of boundaries have really changed. You know, there are no boundaries anymore, and it's like, okay, all right, thank you for the gift. Yes, so yes. And so the last exercise is using the writing and returning theme. You're going to create some metaphors using one abstract.
A metaphor. Oh, a metaphor.
Metaphor. And it could be a simile. It could be simile as well. Yeah, but coming up with sentences where you're using one abstract and two concrete. Or if you can figure out a way to do the one and one, is fine.
Beauty is calloused feet in stilettos.
That is wonderful.
Innocence is like cherry blossom petals falling into a stream on a bright cloudless day. And love is the underpainting on the canvas of a great life.
Wow.
Anybody else want to?
Not after that.
No.
See, that's why anytime you pop a writing workshop, go first.
Yep.
Go, volunteer to go first. If you're in college, if you go back to school, and if the presentation, be the first person to put your hands up. Because the longer you stay, is the harder, is all of a sudden, people get better and better, and you're thinking, oh man. Yeah, there's a secret. Yeah. Anybody else want to try that? Because again, like I said, but this is the sort of exercise that you can try at home. You know, when you look at your work, is there anything I can do here that makes the work difficult? You know, am I writing about love? Can I play around with the values that I care about in ways that's going to, and you see how crazy that's, I'm going to have that stiletto in my head all for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those guys.
Gratitude is a sermon witnessed but never heard, and a trophy awarded when defeat was evident.
Betrayal is a dirty cop putting you in chains.
That was good.
It didn't are there any copyright issues with some of this stuff? And this stuff is really, 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 really good. All right, is there anybody we haven't heard from who, you know?
Forgiveness is shredding your clothes until you repair.
Nice,
Shredding your
nice,
clothes
nice,
until you what?
nice,
To your bed.
nice, nice.
Oh.
But the value of this, this last exercise, folks, is look at the stuff that you're writing about. Look at the themes that you're writing about, because with writers, we keep going back to the same themes all the time.
Yeah.
You know, motherhood, you know, betrayal, you know, and so, and occasionally we can find ways of saying it. The thing with metaphor is saying, we're talking about old stuff, but using new language.
Yeah.
We talk about old things. And the fun thing is like, oh, I mean, we've read a lot of books, but we're hearing stuff that we've never heard before.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Hearing lines that we have never heard before. And, you know, Toni Morrison isn't in the room yet. She hasn't changed her name to Toni Morrison. But again, yeah, so yeah, but it's one of those things about, you know, having the tools to really transform what we do. But thanks, you guys have been a wonderful audience.